Welcome back to another video. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. The international break is now over. Premier League action returns this weekend. Tottenham Hotspur, of course, have got Newcastle United at St James's Park on Sunday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. kickoff. Let's hope for 3 points on Sunday afternoon. I've got three very special guests this evening to talk about the season so far, to talk about the trust, the communication between the club, and obviously previewing the Newcastle game on Sunday. Let's start with Peter Hain from the official Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. Peter, you are the secretary of the Supporters Trust. How are you this evening?
I'm very well. When I retired 5.5 years ago, I thought my life was going to get a lot simpler. Then decided that I needed to do something after retirement, and I knew both Kat and Martin, our co-chairs, and offered my services and said, "Oh, we're looking for a secretary. How do you fancy that?" And little did I know how much time and effort it would take. Been secretary since 2017, February 2017, and as always, this week has thrown some challenges.
Always something happening. Well, Peter, thanks so much for coming on this evening. And it's not your first time on the channel, because of course, you were on a couple of years ago when you run around Stevenage Football Club with me during the charity challenge.
I did, yeah.
Do that now?
Yeah, that was a real pleasure for me, not just to spend time with you and have a chat with you, but also for the fact that I was a Spurs fan since the age of 7, I think. My first recollection of watching a football match was watching the '62 Cup final on telly, and my hero, who I tried to emulate in the playground and on football pitches miserably, was Jimmy Greaves. My dad started going to the odd midweek game in '62, '63, so European Cup, Cup Winners' Cup, came back with the programmes, and I was hooked. So that was it. I wanted to go to football matches, but living in Stevenage and being such a young age, Mum and Dad wouldn't let me go to London on my own, and said, "Well, if you want to go, why don't you walk up the road and watch Stevenage?" So I watched Stevenage from probably about '64 through to '69 when I eventually got to White Hart Lane. And I've followed their results ever since. Moved away from Stevenage and live some way away from them now, but it's probably get back there once or twice a year. But also go and watch the Spurs under-23s there on a regular basis. Yeah. So it's always a club that's been close to my heart, and I never thought I'd ever play on the pitch, let alone just run around the edge, although we were balled off the grass, weren't we? So, well, yeah.
Really appreciated your support that day, Peter. So thanks very much. We have also got Ram Ismail from the director of Enfield Town, and of course a big Tottenham Hotspur fan. Ram, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me onto the show tonight.
Ram, Tottenham and Enfield have a lot of connections. You know, most recently you very kindly sent me some footage of the Tottenham Hotspur under-23s visiting because, you know, they were visiting the youngsters at Enfield, weren't they?
They did. And if I could start saying that the relationship between Enfield and Tottenham Hotspur, it goes back historically many years ago. Talking about the '60s, we have we have a couple of directors who go back to that time with the old Enfield Football Club. And in those days, Spurs used to turn up at the old Southby Road ground and regularly play Enfield. There was one occasion where there was a testimonial for a player after the World Cup in '66, and you had people like Jimmy Greaves refereeing the game or doing the line, and other big players refereeing the. I think Jeff Hurst refereed the game. So although he was a West Ham player, but it was a case of big players going to Enfield Town doing good fundraising and testimonials. And then, of course, in the '80s, we used to have Ardiles, Archibald and the gang playing pre-season friendlies down there. It's only because of the demise of the old Enfield FC, we've had to start all over again with Enfield Town. And we're now forming a very good relationship with Spurs again. And let's hope it continues.
Ram, just tell the viewers, if you can, what it's been like during COVID-19 for a club like Enfield Town.
Well, uncertainty more than anything else. When COVID first kicked in, we were panicking because, of course, we've got rates to pay, rent to pay, and we work on hand to mouth, weekly. So when that kicked in, it was a case of having the meetings and saying, right, how much you got in the bank, how much can we put in just to keep the club afloat? But all credit to the government. They come in for a lot of stick. The grants were made available. There was sort of business rates, holidays for all businesses, especially like ourselves. But also the supporters put their hands in their pocket and did a lot of crowdfunding, which helped. We've raised over the last. It doesn't sound a lot in modern day football, but over the 2 lockdowns, we raised close on £20,000 just from supporters chipping in, and that's a lot of money. If we raise £20,000 today, I could probably tell you we'll probably get promoted to the Conference South. That's how much £20,000 can do. But this £20,000 kept us afloat and kept us secure.
Well, we've also got channel regular Gary. Gary, we're 6.5 minutes in this video. It's the most I've ever known you be quiet.
You know why I'm quiet? Because we had a very busy day and night last night, Chris. I'm still a little bit fragile from the old football awards, but it was a great night last night. Yeah, mate, listen, great night last night. I'm just hearing the news now. I'm sure we'll get onto it with Son and Gil and stuff, but yeah, you just can't write it. Just, life being a Spurs fan, it's just never a dull moment, is there, If nothing else, it keeps you on your toes, doesn't it?
It really does. There is never a dull moment, and that's why we want to start the show with Peter. Now, Peter, in the last couple of hours, the Trust put out a tweet stating that Spurs has today responded to and acknowledged fan concerns. We'll be meeting members of the club's executive board next week. Would you like to read out the official statement on the website?
Yeah, sure. We'll go back over a little bit of the history, I think, in a few minutes. But following a recent request that we put out where there was 13 series of questions to the board because they had said they didn't want to talk to us. And we went live with those questions on Wednesday. Found very early this morning that the club had been in contact with our chair to suggest a brief chat on Zoom to try to get a meeting together, which came as a little bit of a surprise to us. But this is the agreed statement that the football club board have sent to us. And I'll read it, so bear with me while I make sure I read it properly. They say, we wanted to assure you that we have read your list of questions posted publicly on the 13th of October. Fans will now have heard from Fabio about the footballing side of things last week, his second international break update, where he discussed the strategy around rebuilding the team, the new younger players brought into the club, and the need for unity, family, positivity, and not short-termism. Ahead of the new season, Daniel also spoke to fans about our ambitions for the club, including the impact of the pandemic on club finances, and underlined the point that all revenues from whatever event are invested in the team. We shall be further communicating with fans when we announce our financial results in due course. We have thankfully emerged from the pandemic with the club financially stable and sustainable. Remarkably, this will in fact be our first full season in our new stadium with fans. We need to recognise the journey that we are on and its interruption to rebuild both on and off the pitch. As we have said before, the board has always been ambitious for the club and for our supporters. We've also been committed to communication with our fan groups and supporters clubs, as yourselves. Proud Lily Whites and Spurs Ability will hopefully attest to that. We recognise the relationship we all value is currently strained, and we hope that we can emerge from these tough times to work together more successfully. This means continuing to communicate and work closely across many areas of the club. For example, you meet with us on ticketing, catering and safeguarding. You join our monthly business and community liaison group meetings, and we sit alongside each other on the safety advisory group in respect of matches. And we continue to co-promote and support the Tottenham local food bank. We also remain committed to working together to ensure the best possible outcome for the club and its supporters once the recommendations of the fan-led review into football governance are published. In the interests of transparency, please feel free to share this publicly. That is the statement. So we are now looking to have a meeting with members of the club board next week, where we hope to build on the contents of this message.
Peter, could you tell a lot of the viewers that perhaps don't follow a lot of this very much, because we talk about those 13 questions that the trust have put to the club. You didn't get a reply. That's why you published these questions publicly a couple of days ago.
That's right.
Were you surprised by the reaction today?
I think the honest answer to that is yes. I don't think we expected an immediate response, and it was a surprise as well for the club to offer up a meeting without any condition. One of the previous issues where we turned down a meeting was on the basis that there were conditions attached to it, and this was post European Super League and all of the fallout from that, where we'd clearly gone very public and condemning the club board for making that decision. That clearly was the start of the stressor for the relationship between the two of us. Although it was working, as the statement says, at a lower level, i.e., we were talking regularly about ticketing and many other fan aspects of the business. That really did create a chasm between basically Daniel Donna, the executive board, and ourselves, especially when we set out alongside the fan-led review, the government fan-led review, our view on what we were trying to seek from that. So we went public with that when we went and publicised Fans of Football First. Some of you may have seen a video that we prepared quite professionally talking about what being a fan really means, and the fact that fans have very little representation or impact on decisions that were being made by the board. The ESL, for example, we sat down, I think, on 2 or 3 occasions face to face with Daniel and Donna, challenged them about their participation in the European Super League, which they denied. Daniel, I can recall saying very specifically, I'm a fan. Many of the other board members are fans. We have friends who are fans. We know what fans really think, and you can trust us to do the right thing. And that was in the context when we were talking about the European Super League. Well, that clearly wasn't the case. The overwhelming response that we received from our members, over 90%, talking about castigating the board for that decision. It was the wrong decision. And alongside the other 5 English sides, spoke out very highly. Now, some may argue that it was fan power that caused the ESL to be terminated. Some might say that there were other factors affecting it as well, but certainly I don't think without the fans of the 6 speaking up so strongly, I don't think it would have been kicked into the long grass. So that left us in a position whereby our regular board-to-board meetings were not going to happen. The club did offer a discussion about the normal issues that we talk about at those meetings, but were specifically said that the ESL and the decision was off limits and that you would not be able to report back to your members, and we felt that was just unacceptable. For those who don't know, we are a membership organisation. We are democratically elected onto the board. We cover all ranges of Tottenham supporters around the world, not just season ticket holders and One Hotspur members. So that was the position for quite a while, and we then asked for a meeting with the club. Again, some have said that was probably a bit of a knee-jerk, given the run after being top of the league at the first international break, to losing quite dreadfully at the Emirates and Crystal Palace. It wasn't really, because the questions that we would have asked and the 13 questions that we subsequently publicised after the club turned down a meeting were the questions that we would have asked at a board-to-board anyway. I'll very briefly run through those if you think we've got time.
Yeah, please do.
Question, what's the vision for the club? What's the vision for the football club? What are your objectives? How are you going to measure yourselves against those objectives? Where do you want the club to be in 5 years' time? Do you think we've gone forward or backwards over the last 2 years? Probably a little bit of a leading question. I think anybody in their right mind is going to say it would appear that we've gone backwards, although in some of the infrastructure we've gone forwards. Can you expand on Daniel's comment about the DNA of the club? Provide examples of how that's being achieved? Do you think one trophy in 20 years is an acceptable outcome for achieving success for Enix Reign? As you know, they celebrated 20 years this year. It would reassure us if you could provide a clear explanation of where profits earned from non-football events at the stadium go. That's clearly been covered in their their statement today. There's a lot of disquiet and a lot of questions being asked about where's all that money going from the boxing and from NFL, and clearly the club is saying they're being ploughed back into the football side, which is excellent to hear. We'd always understood that to be the case. Daniel, to be fair, had said that previously. How far we got? That was can you give a clear explanation of the relationship between different parts of the business and how resources are used across them? As we know, there's another wing to the football club, which is the property development side of the club, the B&M site, the goods yard, the housing, hotel, Extreme Sports Centre development on Park Lane, for example, are all club or Tottenham Hotspur group companies, management, and obviously proceeds from the football club have gone in to buy those properties. Subsequently, we would expect to see the revenue streams from those developments when they come to fruition to come back into the football club. We made clear our opposition to the ESL. Can you confirm and give a guarantee the club won't support any attempt to revive that or any other similar project? Have the fines and costs incurred by the club's involvement in ESL been paid from the personal finances of owners and directors or from club funds? I think Daniel in the past had said that they would be personally liable for those. So it was, again, seeking definition on that. Can you elaborate on what happened to your proposals for the club advisory panel and fan director on the board? We submitted our thoughts to the football club and did actually have a discussion after the ESL turmoil about how we saw that operating. And clearly we have also fed into the government's review, the fan-led review. Orally, we've given submitted oral evidence and also written evidence to the panel, and we await their final report with the recommendations. To be fair, I think at the time when we had those discussions with the club, it was, this is what we as a club, THFC, would like to do, was to come up with something that would be better than what the government will come up with. But clearly we're not going to say, yes, we agree exactly with what you're saying until we see exactly what the government recommendations are. So that's really in a bit of limbo at the moment. Until that report is published by the government, Tracy Crouch's report is published by the government, then that's really on the back burner. But certainly the club were talking about a club advisory panel, which would include representatives not only from ourselves, but from Spurs Lily Whites, supporters clubs, Spurs Ability, and would report into the board, and there would be a representative at certain board meetings. We'll see what the government come up with and how that actually operates, and whether there's any real power of veto behind that club or fan representation, which we shall see. We also asked the board to examine creating a share ownership structure that could broaden ownership of the club and potentially provide an injection of cash. Can you provide us with an update on that? And they were the 13 questions. So some we already know the answers to, some have been covered by the updates the club have issued about the footballing side with Paratici, and some have been covered by today's statement, but there are clearly some other questions that will be addressed at sometime in the future. So that's where we stood on Wednesday. It remains to be seen. We haven't yet set a date for our board-to-board meeting next week. Will
that be a face-to-face one, Pete?
Again, I don't know. I think we're beginning to open up. I know one of the things that in the board statement they mentioned, the business and community liaison group, I sat on that for 2 or 3 years. And that has recently become a face-to-face situation, having been through Zoom during the pandemic for 2 years. So I think, yes, they're opening up a little bit more in Lily-White House to face-to-face meetings. Obviously, if you're comfortable with providing a COVID pass and saying you've been inoculated and you're obviously not showing any symptoms, then I think that will possibly be a face-to-face. But again, that's yet to be decided.
Hey, when was the last face-to-face meeting between the trust and the club?
It would have been 2020 off the top of my head. I think early 2020. I think March 2020.
Okay.
It was around about the time of the pandemic, because I can remember bumping elbows with Donna and having to sign a disclosure statement at reception in Lily-White House to say I'm not displaying any symptoms. I mean, this was before any injections or and I wasn't running a temperature and I felt healthy and fit, etc., etc. So yeah, I think it was March 2020. Yeah.
Okay. Ram, let's come to you now. Pete talks there about those 13 questions. Surely these are the questions that every single Tottenham Hotspur fan wants the answers to. I'm sure you want the answers to as well. Do you think that we're going to get them?
You know, I mean, possibly. You might get some of the answers. But as a Tottenham Hotspur fan, what you're mainly concerned about, more than anything else, is what goes on the pitch. The questions which are raised by the trust are extremely valid. You know, being a board member of a club and being a part of a member of the Tottenham Hotspur Trust and a member of the Enfield Town Supporters Trust, the trust play a very important role. I don't think there's any danger that the club will be mismanaged, but absolutely right in trying to find out what direction we are going in. But it's about getting it right on the pitch, and that overrides everything. Well, with that documentary which was done on Amazon, there was one line which Daniel Levy used, which was bang on really, and that is the first team, the football team, are the engine room of everything. It's the engine room even of the ladies' team, you know, and how the ladies will develop, and their academy section and what that will be built. So it's about getting it right on the pitch, and that's, you know, trying to find the DNA. Would I like to know what the strategy is for the producing the DNA of Tottenham Hotspur is simply because I think that's been lost. And probably if we go back in a few years, it probably got lost during the free transfer windows where we didn't sign anybody. And then now we're probably suffering because of that. And that's where it's all gone wrong on the pitch. And now it's left questions to be asked, and rightly so. We need a connection from the board to the supporters, and it needs to be leading and showing what avenues will be going down and what it's doing to putting it right again.
Ram, what? Sorry, Pete, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, having seen the way that Daniel operates over the last 20 years, we know he's not the greatest of communicator. He's not someone who enjoys being in front of the camera, and in the past has limited himself to, sort of end of season Christmas statements that were published in the programme. No, okay, we accept that. Not everybody's going to be, the big I am and, sort of be on the telly every 5 minutes. Some chairmen act that way, others don't, and Daniel clearly doesn't. But I think that does create a vacuum into which speculation becomes rife. He could quite easily have closed down those questions that people put about, the proceeds from NFL games and concerts and boxing very, very quickly. But has chosen not to. It's frustrating from that point of view that he's, when you actually meet him face to face, which I'm sure you've done, Ram, and probably you have as well, Chris. He's a very engaging guy. I like the guy personally. I have a lot of time for him, but he's a very astute businessman and very clever and careful in what he does actually say. And I think his mantra is, if the less you say, the less you can be misquoted. Which is unfortunate in some ways, but probably good in others.
Pete, I'll come back to you on that point in a second.
Sure.
Gary, let's come to you. How would you describe, Pete said there in one of the questions about, do you think that the club has moved forward or backwards in the 2 years? Now, the way that a lot of us fans see it, 2 years ago, we were playing in the Champions League final. Yeah. Then, of course, appointed Jose Mourinho. We were playing Europa League football. Now, under Nuno Espirito Santo, we're playing Europa Conference League football. There is a big difference, isn't there?
There's a massive difference, but look, we can talk about it around the house. And at the end of the day, happy fans is when the club's going out and winning games. That's all it is. Look at West Ham the season before last with their fans and everything else, and everything that was going on. As soon as they started winning, everything disappeared. It's about winning games. Foremost, we need to go out and start winning games. If we start winning games, all these, the bad rest at home in the stadium, everything else, it just goes away. That's what we need to do. Do you know what I mean? And the more games we start winning, the better we start playing, the more questions probably Pete and everyone else will want to ask, and we'll need answers. That is the main thing. Winning games breeds, happy players, happy fans, and everything else. And I use West Ham as a perfect example. They were complaining about their stadium. It was the move. It was this. It was that. It's the manager. As soon as they start winning, everyone's happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as well, isn't it? If you think back, as I mentioned earlier, I've been season ticket holder on and off since '69, and I don't remember turning my nose up in 1972 when we won Europe's third trophy, the UEFA Cup, or in '84.
UEFA,
yeah, okay. Yeah, so it'd be great if we could win the conference this year. Absolutely, superb, And I really don't understand why people turn their noses up. And yes, it would be lovely to be in Champions League again. We all remember those nights.
You know what, Pete? Chris will tell you. Well, didn't I say the exact same thing to you last night, Chris? Yeah, that was the exact conversation we had, Pete. I cannot understand. There is, look, I won't go into percentages, but there is a lot of Tottenham fans that, like you said, are turning their nose up at the Europa Conference Trophy. I find it absolutely ridiculous. Listen, that's the competition we're in. That's where we are at the moment. And it's just about building blocks. Let's crack on. Let's put strong teams out. Let's go and win it. And then winning games, no matter what tournament it is going to make the players more confident and happy. It's going to make the fans happier. And it just breeds a winning mentality. It's just common sense. I can't understand that there is Tottenham fans out there that are refusing to watch the games and support the club to win Europa Conference Trophy. I mean, I just find it absolutely ridiculous. It's almost they feel like they're too good for it. We're not. Yeah. That's where we are. That's it.
Pete, let's come back to you, because on this channel, I talk about trophies on every single video. Right? 2008, of course, was the last trophy that we won, the League Cup. Now, when you go into meetings with the likes of Donna Cullen and Daniel Levy and co, does that subject of trophies ever come up? And what do they say about them?
It has cropped up in conversation before, when we've asked similar questions to those 13 that we set out, asking, for example, what are your aims? Our aim is to win X, Y, and Z. We've had discussions across the table about, okay, these are the 4 trophies that, you're up for grabs every year. Hopefully League Cup, FA Cup, UEFA Cup, Europa Cup, or whatever, Champions League, and the league. And if you were going to prioritise any of those, which ones would you say? And I think anybody in their right mind is going to say you've probably got more chance of winning the League Cup, so that should be your first priority, maybe. As Pep has done with City, in the early days. Probably the FA Cup. Probably then you'd say, depending which European competition you were in, that's probably going to be the second toughest, and winning the league is going to be the toughest of the lot. The number of times in those 20 years that we've challenged for the league, a couple of times in 20 years, we've been there and thereabouts in all of the other competitions. So we are close, probably less close now than we were in Pochettino's reign, certainly. But the club, Daniel, Donna, the board, want success, but they realise quite clearly and have elucidated on many occasions, the philosophy of buying players is got to be, we've got to develop youth, we buy young, we are not going to be buying the Galacticos. That isn't going to happen. We haven't got 150 million to splash around. So that's not the level of player that we're looking at. And fans, there's a certain generation, again, this is a generalisation, but there's a certain generation of fans who've grown up through, Champions League manager and, computer games and stuff like that, where splashing the cash does eventually win you competitions and trophies. So there's this balance between fans saying, well, you've got a billionaire owner and you've got all that money, but why is he not then buying X and Y and Z at 100 million pounds? And we know from experience that Joe does not put that sort of money into the football club. That's not what it's about. ENIC is an investment corporation. That's what IC stands for. So we should realise from that yes, they'll try and do as best they can, given the profile that they've got and the financial budget that they have, but that there are limits to what they're going to spend on players. So that's not to say that, for example, we could have bought a diamond and spent 85 million on a brilliant Frenchman. It hasn't quite turned out to be that way, but that money was spent. So there is the cash there to do that sort of deals.
Ram, let's come to you. Now, of course, when Pochettino was at Spurs, he always come out and said that he wanted the big prizes. He wanted to win the Premier League and he wanted to win the Champions League, which, of course, Peter said there, we came very, very close. What do you think that the club's ambition is now? Would they take a top 4 finish over winning an FA Cup or a League Cup? What's your opinion? What would you like to see Spurs do?
Well, I mean, you've touched on it when you said Pep prioritises the League Cup to get a trophy in the cabinet. We sacked the manager a week before Cup final.
Yeah.
So, but going back to Poch's time, he had the golden generation, and in a way, he had the opportunity to win a trophy more than any other manager. He had a young Alderweireld, young Vertonghen, Eriksen when he was 21, fantastic Dembele. He had Rose, Walker. Trippier came in to replace Walker. We had a young Kane, a young Son. So he had a golden generation of very talented players. Credit to whoever scouted these players. I mean, if it's Steve Hitchin, then fantastic. And brought them in, and Poch managed to guide us into the Champions League. Again, we rested on that and didn't invest in the free transfer windows where we didn't sign anyone, and where you should always sign free players every season, 2 or 3 players, just to keep everyone on their toes, and you move 2 or 3 on, just to improve the starting 11, beef up the squad. That wasn't done then. And what happened then was, at the end of Pochettino's reign, he was making some comments about, I'm not the manager, I'm just the coach. And decisions were being made above his head. And so there was already feeling of it all falling apart at the end of Pochettino's reign. Mourinho, when you talk about DNA of Tottenham, well, the point in Mourinho isn't the DNA of Tottenham. And I think we all saw that, more so in hindsight now. And what's happening now, what I see as a supporter, is Tottenham in transition and Tottenham trying to rebuild. And I wrote down some names here so I don't forget anyone, and I'm sure I have forgotten someone. But, you know, we've signed Gill, we've signed Session, Romero, Reguilon, Bergwijn, Tanganga, all very young players that could be at Tottenham for the next 8 or 9 years. And we hope they come to fruition. We've got Skip coming through, who I think is growing into a stronger player every game.
Brilliant.
So I think there is something going on in rebuilding. And then you've got who's that lad, Dylan McCandy in the reserves?
Mark Candy.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with him. I think he'll break through. You got Jay Neil Bennett, who's gone out on loan. I'm sure there's a couple of others in the other 23s, and there are some very talented young players that could come through that maybe in 3 or 4 years' time will see us again have another golden generation. But you know, supporters can't wait 3 or 4 years. They want to win at Newcastle on Sunday, and they want to win the next game after that. And it is a process, and hiring and sacking managers isn't one way of doing it. It's about building it, being patient, and also supporters seeing what's happening as well and understanding what's happening and keeping players like Kane, Son, Højbjerg, Dyer, Lloris. It's about keeping the experience there that's going to help this transitional period.
Gary, Ram mentions that word there, you know, be patient. You know, how patient will a lot of these Tottenham Hotspur fans be? Because, of course, you mentioned there about Pochettino not spending money. It was actually 518 days without spending a single penny in the transfer market. Well, you know, take us back to those days. What did you think about that? Pochettino leaving, and then, of course, Jose Mourinho being sacked 6 days before a final.
I know. Look, I think getting to Champions League final, it was amazing, but it did paper over the cracks. Let's not kid ourselves. We weren't great in the league, and there was a lot of issues there with Poch. We know, you know, he wasn't given all the cards and stuff like that, but I loved that road to the Champions League final, and it's just so typical Tottenham. We ride our luck, you know. You have the goal disallowed, Sterling hat trick, you know. We go through to Ajax, last seconds, everything else, and then we go and give a penalty away in the first minute against Liverpool. It's just typical Tottenham. You know, but we still had time in that game to come back and win it and everything else. And, you know, like a lot of Tottenham fans, we thought our name was on the cup and stuff like that. But we just fall short. We were talking about this last night, Chris. You know, we love our club, but at times it's so testing and it's frustrating. And, you know, and look, I get it. There could be more investment. You know, maybe we don't always bring in the right players and stuff like that. But look, at the end of the day, we've all got the same thing in common. We just want to win. We want to win games and we want to win a bloody trophy. 2008 is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I'm scratching my head. I had this conversation last night. I didn't think when I went to the cup final in 91, that would be the last time I'd see Tottenham win the FA Cup. 91. It's an absolute joke. So I'm with the fans. Every Tottenham supporter has got a right to moan. Like, Pete's got a right to ask all those questions. But unfortunately, with Levy and with Tottenham Hotspur in general, they're just going to answer what they want in the way that they want. And that's fair enough. But at the end of the day, like Pete, like me, like all the guys on the panel and all the 6,000 fans that go every week, we just want to see our team winning. If we can win a few games and we go, you know, like, look, we didn't start. We had a good game against Man City. The next few games weren't great. But the overall feeling of the supporters we were happy because we were winning games. As long as we're winning, we don't give a monkeys. Do you see what I mean? And what we are missing and what we've been absolutely starved of is the trophy. And going back to like what Pete said and we were mentioning last night, any trophy, I couldn't give a monkey's what it is. I'm not even embarrassed. I celebrated with the Audi Cup, mate. That's how bad things are for us, you know? So if we can win the Europa Conference, you know, the Carabao, I was certain we was going to win that Carabao Cup. And I'll be honest with you, Chris, we've been starved for trophies that long, I would have been just as happy winning the Carabao Cup as what I would have been if we'd won the Champions League. And they're miles apart, but both of them have the same thing in common. They're a bloody trophy. We just need a trophy. If we can get a trophy, I'm sure we can kick on and move. And this has to be the bloody year. We can't be having these shows in another 15, 20 years, Chris, when I've lost my hair, everything else, and I'm sitting in a wheelchair rather than one of these nice spinny chairs, and still talking about a bloody trophy, you know? Because if we start winning, the meetings with Pete and the guys and talking to Daniel Levy will be less and less, because everyone will be happy.
Pete, I tell you what, I've got so many questions for you. I don't know how long this video is going to go on for, but when you've gone into meetings, you know, particularly, and I'd love your thoughts on this, and love you to tell us if you're allowed to, about when that question was asked, why was Pochettino sacked? Why didn't he get time? Why didn't he get the investment? And then, of course, why was Jose Mourinho sacked 6 days before a cup final?
Ridiculous.
Have you any of those answers, Pete?
No, it's the simple answer, and I'm not hiding anything behind that because
I didn't think he would.
There's no way that Daniel or Donna are going to tell us the story behind Pochettino's sacking. Again, you know, it's going back to what I was saying earlier about creating a vacuum, but something like that is going to be highly personal. There are going to be personal reasons behind that decision. There are going to be, I know Daniel still counts him as a friend. I know he was heartbroken, in his words, to actually sack him, but it had come to an end, as Gary was talking about. You know, the league form leading up to that Champions League run wasn't brilliant, and there were clearly issues with the squad at that time, which we don't know. Although I've heard some rumours, we don't know exactly what happened to cause that fraction. I think Pochettino was probably tired by that time. You know, it had taken its toll. He's a very intense man, 24/7, and I think, you know, 5 years plus is probably long enough to drain, you know, the effort out of that. Daniel had clearly lined up Mourinho. The night Poch got sacked, I was actually in a meeting in Lily White House, non-football related. It was a community thing, and the normal chair wasn't there, which surprised me. And I walked out, and for those of you who have been in Lily White House, up in the reception, up on the second floor, there's a massive great TV screen, big bank of TV screens, and I saw the Sky Sports yellow ticker going along the bottom saying breaking news, and I'm thinking, oh, what's going on here? You know, I looked at it and goes, oh, Pochettino's been sacked. I just sat down and thought, what's going on here? So I got on the phone.
Can I just stop you there? Because I think a lot of people think that the trust actually know this stuff before the fans. That's not the case, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. I personally hadn't had any inkling about that at all. And it was news to us on that day. I sat down for about 20 minutes seeing the story unfold, thinking that I might bump into someone actually in the offices, but nobody was walking around or coming out into the reception areas. And to be fair, I don't think Daniel and Donna were actually on site. I think they were up at Hotspur Way. And by the time I got in my car, I had a couple of phone calls. Sky Sports phoned me and said, can you do a piece on air when you get back? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. But I also got a message from one of my colleagues saying, you do realise we've approached Mourinho. Okay, right. And then obviously by the following morning, he'd been appointed. So obviously Daniel had been thinking about that replacement for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Conversely, push that forward to Mourinho sacking. Clearly, Daniel hadn't been thinking about that. Now, again, I don't know what the reason behind that was. As Gary said, you know, it was a bit odd to sack someone a couple of days before. Yeah. So, what happened there? Clearly, there was some sort of breakdown between the board and Mourinho. Whether that was over players, yeah, we can all speculate, but we don't know. I certainly don't know it, and I've not heard that many whispers behind that, to be honest with you. But clearly, Daniel at that stage hadn't got any succession planning in place, which is why Ryan got the job. And then there was obviously the protracted search for a manager. That some of that was actually aired in the open. I suspect that was probably Paratici talking to some of his sources in Italy, and that being reported back through the cycle. You know, we've offered it to A, but he's turned it down, so we're going to B, and he's turned it down, and C don't want to do it, and D wants to stay at Brighton, and he wants to go elsewhere. You know, that was a farce of a communication process, that was. So I feel sorry for Nuno in the fact that he's got the job and he's almost 6th, 7th choice. What sort of message does that send to him? What sort of message does that send to the players? And maybe with a 2-year contract, that might be a little bit of, oh, he's only there as a stopgap, you know. So that might impact on player performance and organisation. And is he the right man to do the rebuild that is clearly needed? You know, there are very, very many missing pieces of the puzzle to get us kicking on as well as we should, which is why I'm less confident maybe in a trophy this year than maybe next year. Time will tell.
God, don't tell him that, Pete. Chris will be. Don't tell him that. We got to win one this season.
I was trying to let you down gently.
You are, yeah. Ram, let's come to you now. Let's talk about things on the pitch. Now, of course, we've played 7 Premier League games so far. We've won 4, we've lost 3. Got a goal difference of -4. Got 12 points, sitting in 8th place. What have you made of Tottenham's season so far, and what have you made of Nuno Espirito Santo's start?
Well, I think Nuno's been a good appointment, personally. I think he's definitely something that was needed at Tottenham, because Mourinho left a mess, you know, just like he did at Man United. You know, one thing that Mourinho did at United and at Tottenham, he devalued the assets that are on the pitch. People like Dele Alli. I know Dele Alli was going through a tough spell anyway, but he became he was out the match day squad. Where at one time he was a 40-50 million pound player, and you know, eventually, and under Mourinho, he became a 0 player. And when you look back at United, he did the same with Luke Shaw, calling him overweight and unfit, and yet in the Euros, he's probably England's player of the tournament. So I think Mourinho left a mess, and I think it needed someone like Nuno, who's extremely charming. The way he handled the Kane transfer rumours and situation was first class, absolutely first class. He didn't give the press any headlines. He kept it, you know, straight back, and he managed brilliantly. And I think that showed in the first 3 game performances. You know, the 1-0 against City, you know, apart from the first 10-15 minutes, was an excellent, well-executed performance. The 1-0 at Wolves, you know, okay, Wolves had a few chances, but when you watch United go to them a week later, Wolves should have hammered United as well. But they didn't. They lost 1-0, and Tottenham won 1-0, and that was another well-executed result for Nuno. And then we played Watford. We beat Watford, because we should do on paper. And then we had the international break. And that's when it all went silly, because we had players in South America who then had difficulties coming back and then keeping fit, and with all the COVID protocols. There was a couple of injuries. I think Bergwijn got injured when he was going to return. And I think there's one other as well. And we were facing, I think it was Chelsea we were facing, wasn't it? The first game when we came back? You know, hiding to nothing. It was 0-0, hiding to nothing. Away to Crystal Palace, again 0-0. Tanganga made a dreadful error, got us down to 10 players. Unlucky with a handball. It was a handball, but, you know, trust it to happen when we've gone down to 10 players. And the Arsenal game is, well, that's the only game that was inexcusable. The Arsenal game. However, against Villa, we all turned up, you know, fearing the worst. Villa were on a good form.
Yeah.
No, they'd beaten United away the week before. So they were in excellent form. I don't think many of their players go away on international duty and get overplayed. And yet we thoroughly deserved to win that game. You know, it was We went 1-0 up, 1-1. We could have felt sorry for ourselves having gone 1-0, but yet we bounced back and took the lead again. So I think Nuno's doing as good a job as he can in the mess that he's taken over. I think he's got a good organisational skills. I think he's getting the best out of his players than what he's got out there. And I think the players are responding to him. I think that they are buying into his ways. It's just that little bit of consistency. I'm not sure whether we can go in a transfer window again in January, where there's any other targets that Tottenham are aiming to sign and support Nuno. But I think he could definitely get us back in the top 6. Top 4, I think, he's already spoken for. I mean, I think we're way off that at the moment. But I think Nuno, very charming. He's very organised. I think he's what Tottenham need. He needs support. He needs the backing. And I think he's doing well with what he's got.
Gary, what do you make of Ram's comments there? Because I tell you what, the most hurtful period of this season so far is that week of losing at home in the way that we did in that second half against Chelsea. And then that away game at Arsenal. I tell you what, I was furious that those few weeks, absolutely furious the way that we played. Ram says there that he thinks that the players are playing for Nuno. In my opinion, I think that that whole new manager bounce, that should have lasted a lot longer. He should still be in the honeymoon period, and it doesn't seem like it's like that.
That lasted one game against Man City, and then it was gone. Really, let's be honest about it. But listen, look, the thing with any game and stuff, it's all small margins and a little bit of luck. With so many things. I mean, he touched on the Tanganga. I thought up until Tanganga got sent off, he was probably one of the best players on the pitch, not just for Tottenham, but overall. Yeah. And he just let Zaha just get into his head a bit too much, which was a shame, because he was actually having a really, really good game, Tanganga. But then we go down to 10 men, and the rest is history. But even when you go down to 10 men, away to Palace, you should be keeping a 0-0 draw. So to lose 3-0, okay, you can say we're down to 10 men, we're away from home, But like you touched on, there's no excuses for Chelsea. I was at that one, and first off, I wouldn't say at the interval I thought we were going to win the game, but I thought there was a very good chance we could nick a draw and maybe get a win. To come out and play like they did at the second half just wasn't acceptable. And we touched on it before. They weren't going in for sliding tackles. The players weren't getting... When you think back to like Battle of the Bridge, Chris, and then you look at that game the other week, they're a million miles apart. It's like the players weren't interested. There's times when I'm seeing them walking around. I've seen Harry Kane just walking about like it's not fussed. Dele Alli walking about. And as fans, you're getting more angry and frustrated because you're seeing it. And then you fast forward to Arsenal and you're 3-0 down after half an hour at Arsenal. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable.
Did it surprise you, Gary, that the fact that game at the Emirates was exactly the same starting 11 as what we had last season? And of course, we've had a transfer window under Fabio Paratici.
Yeah, well, we know why didn't Brian Hill start? Why, there was all these players, all our new ones were sitting on the bench. But at the end of the day, Chris, we go around in circles with this and we say, the squad should be strong enough and this and that. And, we changed the back fours and all that. I don't care about any of that. I know there can be decisions with VAR. I know luck can go against you and everything else. But that first half against Arsenal was not acceptable. It's just as simple as that. You cannot go 3-0 down in a North London derby in half an hour. We don't win at the Emirates. We haven't won in 12 years now. We accept that. But at least have a fight for it. And then what do? We get one back with like 5 minutes to go, and all of a sudden they want to go for it then. And ironically, I'm laughing thinking, really, when you looked at that second half, we probably could have got a draw out of it. But the only reason we could have got a draw out of it because Woolwich are free up. So what they're doing? They're sitting back and relaxing because they're already going on Facebook and everything else and laughing at us. They're laughing at us as a team and a club, and they're laughing at our fans. We had it last night. At the moment, they've got the upper hand. Yes, we're sitting above them in the league, but they didn't just beat us at the Emirates, mate. They embarrassed us. Yeah. It's not acceptable, mate. Now, I'm under no false illusions. When they come to ours in January, yes, we will beat them. I'm confident we will beat them. We will up our game. But why does it always have to be when they come to ours? Why are we letting ourselves go 3-0 down? Now, do you blame the players or do you blame Nuno? Because he set them up slightly different and the midfield was non-existent. But all of these excuses and stuff, and, some people get on Nuno's back and some don't. Where am I with Nuno? He wasn't my first choice. It wasn't my fifth choice. Did I want him as a manager? No, but no one else wanted the job. So he's what we got. So you got to back him. But Chris, like we spoke about so many times, all you want to see from these players is a bit of effort. Palace away, Chelsea at home, Arsenal away. I saw no effort, mate. And that's the worst part. You don't mind losing as long as you go for it. That's all we want as fans. Chris, you was at that Arsenal game, mate, and we spoke. You coming back, you travelled all the way there and all the way back. I know it's not far like we went France, but at the end of the day, you want to see them players making effort. There's no effort, mate. You know?
Do you know, Pete, let's come to you because when I was walking out the Emirates Stadium, who did I bump into? Martin from the Trust. I tell you what, the way that I looked, the way he looked, we just grunted at one another and we both walked our separate ways. I tell you, it was a hard game, a hard watch. Yeah. Pete, what have you made of Spurs season so far?
So many ups. Well, some ups, but too many downs for me. I've seen glimpses of things that I can hang on to as being positive. I won't say the second half at the Emirates because, as Gary said, they were 3-0 up coasting and took their foot off the accelerator.
Yeah,
and we couldn't have been any worse than we were in the first half. So it was that first half against Chelsea. I thought we fought really well. I think we matched them. The concern that I had in the second half was that we were so very slow in countering their change by bringing on Kante. And we never really had any answer to that. I know we hadn't on that day got the strongest of benches, so we didn't have that many options, but that to me started raising a few questions about Nuno's tactical ability. And for me, the jury's still out about that element of Nuno.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised by the first 40 minutes at Wolves in the League Cup, especially with guys like Skippy, who I've seen him for the under-23s for 4, 5, 6 years and rated him, and also Brian Hill. I thought had an excellent game, and for me, they were the two that I'd have had in the team sheet for the following game. I'm concerned about Harry, whether all of the chatter pre-season about transfers has got inside his head or not. I don't know. Whether he's carrying an injury, I don't know. He certainly doesn't look up for it. He didn't look up for it against Hungary in midweek. There's something not right there. For me, it's all very well having your heroes, and I can't remember whose quote it was, whether it was Danny Blanchford. The emblem on the front or the badge on the front of the shirt is more important than the name on the back. I can't remember who quoted that. You play for the shirt, and I'm not seeing much of that from Harry. Although you could argue that the midfield structures that we've been playing aren't really providing him with the sort of feed that he needs and he thrives on. For me, idols come and go. It was reported his brother had been talking to Chelsea. And for me, that devalues Harry in my eyes. He's still probably one of the greatest goal scorers behind Jimmy that we've had. But suddenly it's, am I going to be shouting he's one of our own as much? Well, no, I don't actually feel that way anymore, which is sad to say. I'm sure he's still a hero in many people's eyes and will continue to be so as long as he bangs the goals in. But, there's something been taken away from that relationship that he has with the fans, whether he likes it or not, and whatever he says or not. If he scores 25 goals, 30 goals this season, then fine, it'll all be forgotten about until the next transfer window when all the speculation starts up all over again, which bores me to tears, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So
hey, obviously, Harry Kane's got 3 years left on his contract. What do you think will happen with the Harry Kane situation? Because, of course, the club have come out and said publicly that they want to keep him. They want to, have this rebuild around Harry Kane. But of course, you've been in meetings before and said to the board, will we be joining a Super League? And they've said no. Do you trust the club not to sell Harry Kane?
I think everybody has their price. It also depends on the attitude of the player. You know, I was so disappointed when Christian Eriksen left. We've never really replaced his abilities in midfield to unlock a defence. So in a way, I can understand him wanting a new challenge. I can understand Harry wanting a new challenge. And it's very difficult to keep a player motivated who wants to leave the club. I think Christian's performance did fall away a little. And I'm hoping that's not what I'm seeing with Harry now. If I were a betting man, I would expect him to be on the move at the end of this season. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I would think will happen with that.
Yeah. Ram, let's come to you. Are you worried about Harry Kane at the moment? Because, of course, he's not scored in the Premier League so far. Of course, he doesn't seem to be doing that well for England either, certainly in this international break. And breaking news in the last hour or so about Heung-min Son and Bryan Hill. Well, it's been reported anyway that both of them have got COVID and could possibly miss Newcastle's game. Of course, the Europa Conference League game and the West Ham United away game next weekend. How much of a blow will that be?
Talk about disaster. I agree with everything which Peter just said, to be quite honest. I'll add that Harry Kane hasn't been playing well for England, even back in the Euros. He didn't score in the group stages where you would expect him maybe to score. He scored against a lackluster Ukraine side. He managed to get a couple of goals in that game. Missed his penalty against Denmark, but he was fortunate enough to get the follow-up. So I don't think he played well in the Euros. And I think what's happened is Levy, I think Harry wanted to leave. I think he wanted to go. And Levy has kept an unhappy player. He's forced him to stay. He's tied him to his contract. And I think that's what we're seeing out there on the pitch now. I think there's certain percentages of Harry Kane that's missing. And it's come from this transfer saga where he wanted to go for trophies. Levy wanted to keep his talisman. And I think Levy's going to learn a lesson here. Should have taken the 120 or 130, whatever was offered, and not keep an unhappy player in your mix, and maybe use that money to attract one or two strikers that could play up front for Tottenham and still get 20, 30 goals between them. So that's where I see Harry Kane. I think Harry Kane, if he carries on the way he is, I've got a feeling he will be sold so long as there's still a buyer out there for him. I'm sure there will be. And so long as they're willing to pay 100+ million for him, maybe not 150, but if someone offers 100 million now, I think it's probably take it and reinvest it and carry on with the rebuild.
Ram, will any club pay what Daniel Levy and the board want for Harry Kane, even if it is next summer?
He always wants another 5 million, doesn't he, Daniel? But it's all you're looking at Harry Kane. You're looking at him, and it's not the same Harry Kane. It's not the Harry Kane. And when you look at Man City, they do need a striker. So let them have him. Let them have him, and then reinvest the money. It'll be sad because we don't want to see our best player go. And one thing good about Daniel Levy is he stands up for his club. He doesn't let clubs come in, bully you, and take your best players. He rinses them before they take their best players. But in this case, I think we've got to let, looking at Harry's body language, it doesn't look good.
No.
And missing Son and not so much Gil, except that if Son wasn't available, we expect Gil to come in for him. So that's the only downfall in those two getting the COVID. But Son's going to be sorely missed, as he always is when he isn't playing.
Absolutely. Gary, let's come to you. Harry Kane has failed to score in 6 Premier League games for the first time since the opening 6 matches of the 15-16 season. And, of course, the news about Heung-min Son possibly being out for Sunday's game and then the Europa Conference game and then the West Ham game next weekend. He is currently our top goal scorer with 3 Premier League goals. And the other 2 that we've scored were penalties and an own goal. Where are the goals coming from on Sunday?
They're not. It's a disaster, if I've got to be honest, mate. As soon as I heard the news about Son, that's it. Because, listen, you know, I agree with everything you say. The only thing I would say, I don't think Harry Kane is our best player. I think Son is our best player. And I think when we don't have Harry Kane in the team, I think we can still... Look, I mean, you've only got to think of the first game of the season. You've only got to think right the way through the Champions League, getting to the final. For me, Son, if we're going to miss Son for the next... Is it 3 games he's going to be out? Yeah, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, my prediction for Sunday was a 2-2 draw. I'll probably stay with that, but I was kind of thinking there's a chance we could win it. But Son not in the team. Look, who knows? Look, you know, maybe Kane might step up, but you know, it's like what Pete mentioned with the thing in regards to he's not getting the service and all that, which I get to a certain extent. But this has been it's been said a lot at, you know, at Tottenham, at England, and everything else. And I was saying it, but I think the point and the time comes when you've got to not defend Harry Kane, but you've got to look at Harry Kane now. And I was at that England game the other day, and he just looks slow. He just doesn't look fully fit. And I don't know if it's because he wanted the move to City.
Is it him though, Gary, or is it the service, even for England and for Tottenham? Is it the service or is it him?
I wouldn't say it's just the service, because I think Harry Kane before, when he wasn't getting the service, would create his own goals, and he was good enough for that. And he's not doing it this time. That's why I don't think you can just say he's not getting the service at Tottenham, he's not getting the service at England. You can say partly that's the reason, but you also have to say some of it is mental and some of it is physical, because the Harry Kane of old, whether he wasn't getting the service or not, I mean, you look back to Son and Kane, right, under Mourinho. I mean, they were on fire. Kane was dropping deep like he'd never done before. And what was he doing? He was creating goals for Son, and it was vice versa. No one was talking about anyone in midfield now. Now, because Kane is not playing very well, and whether that be because he didn't get his move to City and he's not happy there or whatever. Look, one thing about Harry Kane, right? He's a professional. He'll always be professional, and he'll always put his shirt on and go out for Tottenham. That's why I don't think it's mainly he's thinking of the move in City. I just think Harry Kane is just a yard off the pace. And if he wasn't a yard off the pace, he'd be doing like what he was doing last season. He'd be creating goals for Son and vice versa. And he's not doing that. You know, the team hasn't changed. Pretty much it's the same England team. He's just not the Harry Kane at the moment. And is that form going to come back? Maybe if Son's out for a few games, maybe Kane might shine. He got a hat-trick in the Europa Conference, but let's face it, it was at a mediocre team. So you can't really compare it. Goals are goals, and you can only beat who's in front of you, yes. But it's not really spurred him on to really with any more confidence or any better performances. So I think it's slightly mental, but mainly physical, you know? And like I just said, I don't think you can blame he's not getting the service, because it didn't matter last season, Chris, you know? Do you know what I mean? It really didn't. So something's going on there, but it's not good, mate. And it's definitely not good now we've lost Son, let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, of course, Newcastle play Spurs, 4:30 p.m. kickoff at St James's Park on Sunday. Steve Bruce's 1,000th game in charge as a manager. He has said that no discussions have taken place, but he will be in charge against Spurs. Newcastle are winless this season, second from bottom, just being taken over. The Saudi Arabian takeover completed last week after Mike Ashley's 14 years in charge. Pete, let's come to you. Now, what is St James's Park going to be like on Sunday? What do you make of this takeover? And I've got to ask the question, you know, from the trust, you know, from the board's perspective, if this was to happen to Spurs, how would the trust feel about it? You know, a takeover of this kind.
A lot of questions there.
I told you.
Okay, Saudi Arabia takeover of Tottenham. There was an article I think I read, and it was almost a spoiler piece by a Sunderland newspaper that was, I won't say ripping Newcastle to pieces, but was quite pleasantly pointing out you do realise that the Saudi Amanda Staveley group and the Sovereign Wealth group had actually been in conversation with Tottenham 2 years ago. May 2019. Rings a bell, that date.
Just before the Champions League final, yeah.
Well, yeah. With a 2.5 billion plan with 1 billion worth of add-ons, which fell through for unspecified reasons. How would I feel? It's one of those, sort of dilemmas when you're sitting around the dinner table. How would you feel if your club was taken over by a murderous regime who we sell arms to? I don't know. I'm always of the view, and as are a lot of Newcastle fans, that I really don't care where that money's coming from. I want a successful football team in front of me. I go to watch football. I'm really not bothered about all the politics behind it. I think you've got to be fairly blinkered to do that. Would I give up my season ticket? I don't know, if push come to shove. I didn't do it during the pandemic. I haven't done it yet. I honestly don't know is the answer to that one. What impact it has as far as the trust is concerned, we need to talk to our members. There's obviously a lot of disquiet about, the journalist's murder. But, how do you equate that with us being an arms supplier to Saudi Arabia? The whole thing is rather distasteful to me. I think Sunday's going to be a circus. I think it's going to be a bear pit. I think it's going to be all. Geordies are a really vociferous bunch anyway, so they're going to think it's the coming of the second Messiah. They're going to be world beaters. They're going to do Man City. They're going to do a Chelsea. They're going to win the league. They're going to buy all sorts of players, all that sort of stuff, and that is quite a long way down the track. But it clearly impacts on our chances of top 4, top 6 when you've got a big money club, probably the richest club in the world, or in theory, with the sovereign wealth fund behind it. So I think it's going to be a spectacle. It's going to be fun. It's going to be excruciating. Last time I went up there was that 5-1 defeat where Moussa Sissoko looked like a world beater for Newcastle. And that was a miserable train journey back. I hope I'm not going to have a miserable train journey back on Sunday night. But it really does call into question, fit and proper ownership test. It's going to be part of, I think, the government review. The Premier League have quite clearly looked at it, and they think that the sovereign wealth fund is at arm's length from the Saudi regime. If you read Private Eye and realise who the board of the Saudi wealth fund or the sovereign wealth fund are, I think it's the interior who are that close to the leadership in Saudi. So I can't see how there can be that separation, to be honest with you. But the Premier League have okayed it. So it means there's another big money club being bankrolled by a state. Somewhat distasteful. But then, who knows? 2 years down the line, we get bought out by whoever.
President of Bahrain or someone.
Yeah.
Ram, let's come to you. What are your thoughts on the Newcastle takeover?
I don't know what to make of it, really. It's just the Premier League becoming a circus. You've got Abramovich at Chelsea, you've got the Qatar people at Man City, you've got the Americans at United and Arsenal, and now you've got the Saudis at Newcastle. It's just become a billionaire's playground, really. They want to. I've mentioned Liverpool's owners as well. They try to form the Super League just to show you how out of touch they are. And in Daniel Levy's defence, I'm sure he wasn't against it, but he couldn't sit back and let 5 other clubs form a Super League and him just to say, no, I'm not joining that. That's outrageous. So in his defence, he had to probably go along with it. Not that he was probably unwilling either. But my opinion of Newcastle is it could go pear-shaped. will the best players in the world want to go to Newcastle? No disrespect to Newcastle area or the Geordies, but would you want to go and live up there in the climate up there, where you could, otherwise?
I said.
Where otherwise you could earn your millions in Madrid or Barcelona or cosmopolitan places like Paris and London.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be your first choice, would it, Newcastle?
They've got nice pies up there, though, apparently.
Yeah, well, good stag do's up there.
Yeah, not bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Good nightlife.
Yeah. So
I think all the stars round want to go and play for Steve Bruce, don't they?
Yeah.
And looking towards Sunday's game, I think there's going to be a lot of uncertainty amongst that Newcastle changing room. You know, where do those players stand? Those on 2-year contracts come, this year and next year. They're going to think, hang on a minute, he's brought in so and so, so and so, and so and so. I'm going to be out the team. What do I do? Do I take a transfer now, or do I wait a year and go for free and fill my boots up? It's going to create a lot of uncertainty. How will the players come out on Sunday? Full guns blazing? No, they're going to be in doubt about their future. And there will be that percentage of doubt in their minds. And in normal circumstances, I think Newcastle have only got two players really to watch out for. That's St. Maxim and if Callum Wilson's fit. Otherwise, there shouldn't really be too much there for Tottenham to fear.
Well, the team news actually is Callum Wilson will be back after missing 4 games. Lascelles, Willock and Shelby are all back as well. It's amazing how all of these injured players, all of the teams we're playing, they all come back for the Tottenham Hotspur game. Gary, what do you think St James's Park's going to be like on Sunday?
Horrible, annoying. I'm glad I'm not going because I'd get the amp. I think it's just going to be ridiculous. I mean, they're almost as loud as me, to be honest with you, the Geordies. Now they're going to be, there's going to be Saudi outfits on. There'll be all sorts. It'll be like, oh, we're the best thing since sliced bread. I just hope we upset their party. I really do. But if I'm honest with you, it's just typical Tottenham. Look, Steve Bruce is going to be sacked. We know that. He'll probably be sacked after the Tottenham game, win or lose. Doesn't matter. He's gone, right? They keep him for his 1000th game. We all know that. But it's just typical Tottenham that he's going to get his win. His 1000th managerial job is going to beat Tottenham Hotspur. Their first win in the season. And Maximin is going to get a couple of goals and that's it. But I just hope, and my hope is wearing thinner and thinner and thinner now on about Son and Gill, that we can just upset their party. Because at the end of the day, it's just so annoying. I mean, do you know what I mean, Chris? Like, we spoke about this the other week. It's just sod's law, the timing of all of this happens, and who have we got? Newcastle away. It's just you can't write it. And now we're 2 days out before the game, right? And do you know another thing that I hate? I hate when it's all the way on a Sunday and you got to wait. I'd rather it be a Saturday morning game and then you don't spoil the rest of my weekend. I can put it on mute so I don't have to listen to the bad singing of the Geordies and be done with if we lose. And if we win, I get back from work, we'll match of the day and enjoy it. When it's dragged out onto Sunday afternoon, you've got the whole weekend now where all you're thinking about is, here we go, they've been bought out. But you raise a good point where you say, because we're Tottenham fans, we're thinking the worst. Son's out. They've just been taken over. But there'll be a lot of unrest in there, and a lot of players will be nervous thinking, am I out the door? Am I staying? And
they're playing for their futures, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe, just maybe, we can go there and upset the party. We've got a good result. Let's try and bring it round a bit now, right? We played very well against Aston Villa. And like what Pete mentioned earlier, yes, when it went to 1-1, our heads didn't drop. What I don't want to see is Tottenham going 1-0 down, which will probably happen, and their heads dropping. And the only worry that I have is when that happens at the moment, the one player that you can count on to go at them is Son. The only other guy who's really sort of does that is Moura. Do you know, they're the two players that you think, will get it by scrap of neck and go for it. So I just hope, if and when we go 1-0 down, because we probably will, because it's Tottenham and Maximum will score, we've got some sort of response and we bloody go for it. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be as positive as I can, Chris, but it's so frustrating because I was still looking forward to Sunday. And then when you get the Son news, on top of them being buying out and you being away and record sales of their tickets where no one was interested in going to a game, it's just the hypocrisy of it. You know, that's what annoys me. You got the likes of Alan Shearer, who had nothing good to say about the Super League, this and the other, and then he's doing tweet after tweet. Now they've been bought out by the Saudis. Do you know, it's just hypocrites. It just winds me up, mate. It winds me up.
Pete, let's come to you now. Of course, the international breaks, they just seem to come at the wrong time for Spurs. Of course, we won 3 out of 3 in the Premier League. International break, that caused chaos for us. And then, of course, we've just beat Aston Villa. International break, where you want that momentum to get going again. International break. But the good thing is that Davinson Sanchez, Giovanni Lo Celso and Christian Romero are all flying back. They should be available for this game. How important is someone like Christian Romero going to be for Spurs on Sunday?
I think very important. He's becoming, in my eyes, you know, one of the first choices on the team sheet. You know, he's really settled in very quickly, and he looks a really strong player. Had a really good performance for Argentina in the week's internationals. I'm hoping that, you know, we're not going to see a situation. I was thinking again of the Wolves League Cup game, you know, where we look really good, silence the crowd, 2-0 up. They get a header from a free kick, a corner, I think it was. 2-1, lifts the crowd, lifts the team, and I can see the same sort of thing happening on Sunday. But I think it's going to be important if we can get 11 fit players on the pitch who can last for 90 minutes, and given the exertions of the international break, yeah, we're going to be light on the bench, you know, if Hill and Sonny are out. Bergwijn, I think, is still out as well. So we haven't really got a great deal of pace in that side, as Gary said, apart from Lucas. Whether he might think about Dylan Marcandi, he's got pace. He really has got pace. But again, I'd say he's probably not quite ready for a first team. But give him 20 minutes to run at what would and is a panicky Newcastle defence and a very leaky Newcastle defence. He could do some real damage. You know, I don't see Nuno being that adventurous with a young player, to be honest with you. But I hope I'm proved wrong. I was asked the other day, what do you think? I said, I think we win 2-1. But in my Twitter bio, I am stupidly optimistic.
We all are, Pete. We all do it. We all do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, let's just go through Newcastle's stats so far this season. Of course, they're sitting in 19th place in the relegation zone right now. Played 7. They haven't won a game. They've drawn 3. They've lost 4. Goal difference of -8. They've only got 3 points. Pete, what have you made of Newcastle's season so far? And surely this is a game on paper that we should be winning comfortably.
But we play on grass. We don't play on paper. It's always in the back of your mind, isn't it? Yeah, Dr. Tottenham will see you now.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got 1 or 2 good players. You know, I think, you know, Ram mentioned Sam Maximo. I think he's an excellent player, and he, you know, running at a defensive line, you know, he'll create all sorts of panic. Yeah, Willock had a great season for them when he was with them tail end last year. You know, okay, he's coming back to fitness, and whether he'll be as effective for 90 minutes or not is another matter. They're going to be lifted by the crowd. There's no doubt about that, you know. And I think it all depends upon if we get our noses in front earlier and shut them up, then it would be a matter of don't do anything silly, keep your heads. It almost sounds Mourinho-like, but sit on it, maybe nick a second goal, and hope that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I think that place will be an absolute party on Sunday. We normally do the score predictions at the end, but I can tell you now, I think I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw on Sunday, because I think that place will be absolutely buzzing. Every single fan will be on such a high, and they will make the atmosphere incredible. Ram, let's come to you. Now, Newcastle have only kept 2 clean sheets in the past 26 Premier League home games, conceding 49 goals. We know that they ship a lot of goals. And as Gary said there, Steve Bruce on the verge of being sacked, new manager taking over, players playing for their futures. Are you confident going into this game?
Not the current Tottenham team, because you just don't know what to expect. But what I do know is that looking the way Nuno sets teams up, he does set them up not to lose first, to keep it a tight ship, knowing that you've got Harry Kane, Lucas Moura, that do score goals and can score goals. So I think keep the tight ship. If you do take the lead, you watch those Geordies turn. They're a different breed. You know, so going 1-0 up and keeping it 1-0 for more than 5 or 10 minutes, and the Geordies will turn. If there's some game management skills Tottenham have got to kill the noise, you know, players could go down, making out they're injured, just quietening the crowd down, stopping any flow that Newcastle might get. Against Aston Villa, Romero played his best game to date. So did the right back, Royal. Played his best game to date. Looked a real prospect. Skippy, we've said, looks every bit as good as Højbjerg at the moment in that holding role. So I think if we go into it, you know, Reguilon, Dyer, Romero, Royal, and then you've got Højbjerg and Skip, there's your foundations. There's your soldiers that are fight for you, and you can see them battling for you. And then you got Lo Celso, Kane, Lucas, maybe in more advanced roles. And then we need a performance out of Ndombele. You just don't know what you're going to get out of him. You know, he looks a lovely chap, lovely guy, but he's got the flicks and the tricks, but he just doesn't seem the full package. He just seems. I just don't know what to make of him. He looks very talented, but yet we don't get enough out of him. But I think
the thing is, though, Ram, we need, you know, the club needs, Nuno needs, you know, the board need, all of us fans need every single player to step up now and start delivering. We can't keep waiting, can we? We've got to have delivery from these players.
Right. Yeah. If we had Eriksen in place of Ndombele, with all those players I mentioned, I'd say Tottenham would go out there and win. But that Ndombele role is vacant, even when he's playing. You know, it's. I don't know what to think, but I think we could get a win up there if we play well and to our potential. Now Newcastle aren't a good team; they're not 19th for no reason. They've had lack of investment from Ashley. They yo-yo up and down from the Championship to the Premier League. You know, I think the game is there for Tottenham's taking. And so long as we've got a good, solid performance in with that group, which I mentioned, like I said, the bench will be a bit bare. Son will be a sore miss. But, you know, we need Kane to step up. We need Lucas to step up and to take the challenge on.
Gary, let's come to you. Just slightly off topic here. A question from Faz before we talk about Newcastle. Big up the panel. Is it time to sell Dele Alli? How much? Because there always seems to be this split opinion about Dele Alli. Of course, we know that Dele Alli evolved. He has delivered. Fantastic player. Will we ever see that Dele Alli back?
Oh, Chris, you know, I don't think so, mate. You know, listen, I was a big Dele fan. But it's funny, like we just mentioned a minute ago there with Ndombele and the flicks and the tricks. I mean, I think they're on par at the moment, Ndombele and Dele Alli. It's just not working for either of them. You know, I watched the other day, I think it was like 20 or something of Dele Alli's goals, and you start remembering some of the goals he scored. You know, the one where he's over his head turned. Oh, it's just that talent that he has. He's got it in there, but listen, I don't know if it's partly when Mourinho came in and it knocked his confidence, or he's playing out of position, or whatever it may be. But I don't know, Chris, you know, I'm a bit on the fence with it. I know you get some fans that like, look, you know, you can't be sentimental to players and, you know, like, yeah, they might love Tottenham all that, but if they're not good enough, they've got to go. I get that. I'm in the middle of all of that. But with the likes of players like Harry Winks, I just want him gone because I know he's not quality and he's not good enough for Tottenham. Get rid of him. But players like Dele Alli and Ndombele, you're very reluctant to get rid of them because you're worried that if you do, and then they go somewhere else, you're going to see what they were like before. And Dele Alli is still quite young and he is a very, very talented player. But for whatever reason, Chris, when Mourinho first came in, he sort of lifted a bit, you know, like what you touched on earlier with the Amazon documentary. He was like, is it you or Dele Alli's brother? And he peaked. And then there was all that issue with Mourinho. He singled him out. And ever since then, it's like he's not recovered and he just can't quite find his form. He's had patches of it in the Europa and stuff here and there. And there's been little glimpses. You know, he scored a good sort of overhead kick goal. And I remember he got a penalty, he nutmegged the play. And there's been glimpses, but it's just not been enough, you know. And if I'm honest with you, I'm not confident when Dele Alli starts. I'm probably more happy and confident now when Dele Alli and Ndombele are on the bench as opposed to when they're in the first team. And that didn't used to be the case before, but that's where I am now, because I don't think they give much to the team. You know, it's a shame. It really is. You know, I want Dele Alli to prove me wrong, Chris, but how long do you give these players, mate?
Yeah, it's like I said many times, even in the Europa League games last season, now Europa Conference League games, whenever these players get their opportunities, they've got to grab it in order to get Premier League football. Pete, I just want to ask you, in your meeting next week, whenever it will be, do you think the subject of how much money is available in the January transfer window will come up?
That's the sort of question that we do normally ask. Probably in more general terms, you know, what, if any, of your plans for the January transfer window? You know, we've heard various different responses going back to what we were talking about, you know, that period of 18 months where we didn't buy anybody. It was up, you know, well, the manager is happy with his squad. We don't feel that we need to strengthen it, you know, was one of the phrases that was used. And Daniel, to be fair, has always said, you know, it's very difficult to buy anyone in January. It's a very difficult time to buy. It's much easier to sell. But to sell a player, you really need that player to want to go. I think, you know, going back to what we were talking about, Harry Winks, you know, I think he's been quoted as saying that, you know, he wants to fight for his place. I think he probably has. There was that quote, I think, with Pochettino, where he said he was playing through pain every game. Now, whether he's still the same or not, he's certainly not the same. Or it doesn't appear to be the same player that he was 2 years ago. As far as Dele's concerned, I'm really not sure whether we'll ever see, you know, the Dele again. I think he's playing out of position, which is difficult. He played out of position for Mourinho, and he's playing out of position now because really he's so much better when he probably plays alongside Kane or just off of Kane. I think with Sonny and the team, it's very difficult to accommodate all three of them without Dele having to drop back and do a lot more work, which I think has been seen a little bit in the games that he has played. You know, he has put a shift in and he's covered some miles. I've got my doubts whether we'll see the best of him again. I think it would be difficult to fit into that team structure that we've got. It would be interesting to see if he gets a start on Sunday, you know, given, you know, the lack of players ahead of Ndombele. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Can I just say, someone in the comments, Nigel Gates, I think I've missed your comment, so if you could put it up again, I'll put it on screen for you. Sorry about that. Pete, just want to come back to you. Of course, I see you a lot watching the under-18s, the under-19s, under-23s, you know, over recent years and even recently at Stevenage. Any players are taking your eye at the moment? Any players that you think are going to come through and be a real star in the future for Spurs?
I mentioned Dylan Candy. I really rate him. He reminds me very much of a tenacious Terry Gibson, you know, for the older fan. Very fast, very low centre of gravity. Got a lot of tricks. Good player. The other one that I really like the look of is a guy called Harvey White. Similar sort of role to Skippy that he plays. Obviously, you know, all these guys are very, very comfortable on the ball and in possession, and their passing is brilliant. But he's got an edge to him. You know, he gets in players' faces. I like him very much, but he's probably defensive midfielder a lot. So, you know, any chances that he would have would be in the future at some time, and I would expect him to go out on loan to get some experience somewhere. A very good player, but it is a very young team. There's no one there who I would say, they're ready, but there's some real talent there for the future, you know, if they develop on. And probably, looking back at some of the old team sheets from 5, 6, 7 years ago, there's probably only 2, maybe 3 who've ever made it to first team level. So that's the sort of percentage that you're looking at. But they're very well groomed, very well trained, very well coached, and play a really good team pattern as well in the under-23s at the moment. You know, there's a good little side there.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's get into score predictions for the Newcastle game. Pete, you still going for a 2-1 Spurs win?
Yeah, I've not been talked out of it. Stupidly optimistic, but yeah, I'll go 2-1. Harry scoring.
Ram, what are you going for?
I'll go for 2-0, not to be the same as Peter.
2-0. Wow, confidence. See, after all the negative speak tonight on this show, we're going for wins. Gary, what are you going for?
Yeah, I've got to upset the apple cart here. Sorry, even before the news with Son and Hill, I hope they prove me wrong, but I think I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. But I will say this, and I will say this because I think at the moment we're going into this game a lot like we were going into the Villa game. Okay, Aston Villa were doing really well. You know, they'd had some amazing results. They played really well. We'd gone on the back of 3 defeats. We were awful. And it feels a little bit like the same. So I'm hoping Tottenham can prove us wrong and we can go there on Sunday and just basically, you know, like the lad said, just shut them up. If we get an early goal, I think it could make all the difference. And listen, look, I don't need to say it. We all know who needs to score. But if Kane gets a goal, that could change the whole game. You know, so I'm going to go 2-2, but I'm secretly hoping we can have another performance like we did against Villa and just shut the Geordies up and beat them. You know, come on. And then straight after that, Bruce will be sacked. They'll get in Conte or whoever they're talking about and let them crack on. But listen, they might have all the money, but these things don't happen overnight. You know, just because they've got all this money and taken over doesn't mean they're going to go from being a team sitting 19th for being, you know, Premier League winners. They might play absolutely awful on Sunday with the fans behind them or not. You know, there's been plenty of packed stadiums and the teams still played awful, you know? So you just don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Pete, just want to come to you on this question from Nigel. Thanks so much, Nigel, for bringing this back. With countries now owning clubs, shouldn't the EPL consider bringing in a salary cap for some equality?
Interesting concept. I mean, I'm not a big fan of American sports, and I think they have a salary cap in NFL and probably other sports. How that actually works, I really don't know. The difficulty would be with the Premier League would be getting it past all of the 20 clubs, member clubs. They would have to turn around and say, yeah, we're all in support of that. Can you imagine Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, City, even ourselves, you know, saying, yeah, we'll all agree to a transfer cap? Certainly Newcastle wouldn't. So I don't think there will be enough club chairmen to support that notion. It would be interesting to see how it worked. Clubs always find ways around the salary cap. You know, again, I don't know how it works in America, but you've got image rights, all sorts of things like that would be on top. Individual contracts, sponsorship contracts that would boost your earnings. So I think it's a nice concept, but I really don't think there would be enough support within the Premier League to be able to get that through.
Pete, not with your trust hat on, but you personally as a Tottenham Hotspur fan, what would you personally be happy with Tottenham achieving this season? I would love to. I would realistically, I would love to see us win the FA Cup or the League Cup. Realistically, Pete.
Yeah, realistically, yeah. I think the conference is too many games, and I think there will end up being dropouts from the Europa League. And correct me if I'm wrong, with some Champions League dropouts. I think if you come fourth in the Champions League group, you might drop into the conference. So there are going to be some good clubs coming into the knockout round. So, you know, that's going to be a slog. League, I cannot see us getting top 4. Yeah, it'd be lovely to think we could nick a Champions League place, but I really can't see that. But yeah, the League Cup, you know, would always be the top of my list. They're saying, you know, you're probably only about 3 games from Wembley. You've got, I think they're doing away with the 2-legged semi-finals this year. I think they did last year. So in theory, you know, we've got Burnley coming up, and then we've got 3 wins, and you're in the final. So that is inherently possible. You know, that's not beyond the stretching it. The FA Cup's always down to who you get in the draw. You get a favourable draw, you coast through to the semi-final, you've got a real sniff. You end up getting a difficult away tie, and you know you could go out at the early stages.
Well, fingers crossed, Pete. Gary, thanks so much for tonight.
Thanks, mate. You know, always a pleasure, Chris. We're seeing way too much of each other at the moment. It's a bit of a worry, isn't it?
Well, I won't be seeing you for a few days now.
Only a few.
Amsterdam next week. Here we come. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and tell everyone what's happening down at Enfield Town at the moment.
Enfield Town, we're doing great stuff. In case I'm sure Peter knows, but in case Gary doesn't know, we are the country's first ever supporters-owned football club. So we are totally owned. So I talk about changing and player caps and all of that. One thing I'd like to see this populist government do is make an enforced purchase orders of all football clubs and make it 51% fan-owned and 49% businessman-owned.
Yeah.
You know, and then you know, they can do that. They've got an 80-seat majority. So when they have all this chat, Peter, about bringing in fan ownership, they've got 80 majority in Parliament. They can enforce anything they want.
Yeah.
And so if they pass it through Parliament, they'll get it through. And the fans will probably, or every fan will probably be behind it, except the Man City and Chelsea ones.
Yeah.
You know, throughout the whole country, everyone will be behind it. But Enfield Town, we're 100% fan owned. At the moment, you speak to me perfectly, Chris, because we're top of the league after 10 games in the Isthmian Premier Division. And tomorrow we face Worthing, who are looking to bring up about 200 fans from Sussex, who are second. So we've got a bit of a big game there down at Donkey Lane.
Well, Ram, final question for you. Who's going to win a trophy next, Enfield or Spurs?
Oh, I'll tell you something. we bottle it as well.
You can't say that.
Yeah, I know. The good thing about Enfield Town is we won the Isthmian League Cup about 4 years ago. And we're still the holders because it's never been completed. You know, we've had lockdown 1, lockdown 2, and now we're in the 4th season since we've won it. We're still the holders of the Isthmian League Isthmian League Cup. It's a great story.
You ought to blag it and say you can keep it after 3 years.
Yeah, it should do.
Well, Ram, thanks so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
No, thank you, Chris.
And Pete, tell everyone where they can find the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust, how people can get involved, and how the Supporters Trust helps fans like us. Yep.
We are a membership organisation. THSTofficial.com/membership. You can join us. Full member, £10 a year. Gives you full voting rights, access to an online forum where we discuss with members all issues and any concerns that people have. Associate member is free. Supporters clubs, official Tottenham Hotspur supporters clubs can join for £25, and that gives all of their members associate membership. What we try and do is represent fans as much as we can. So not only dealing with issues about specifically ticketing, you know, the current climate that we work in with digital ticketing has caused many issues for many fans, not just season ticket holders. So we try to help out, you know, in conjunction with the ticket office where people have issues with that. Also with ticket exchange and ticket share, the logical ways of moving your season ticket on to another member or someone with a CRN, customer reference number. All sorts of issues with that, plus the fact of, you know, this 3-stage process that you go through to enter the stadium, you know, with my season ticket in my iPhone, along with my COVID pass that I sometimes a challenge to show. And then, you know, to get into the stadium, you know, that is a challenge for people who are a little bit technophobic. But also dealing with any issues that any fan has, you know, whether it be down to, oh, why can't we just buy a portion of chips in the stadium, to the cost of a beer, to issues with access, with issues with late ticketing arrivals for away match tickets, which we've suffered on 1 or 2 occasions. So anything like that, we will try and help. We will try and put our fans in contact with the right people at the club who can assist and help. And God forbid anybody who gets wrongly arrested, but we can also take on casework along those lines with the help of very good people at the Football Supporters Association who can help us out with that level of casework, you know, where ticketing bans or sanctions are imposed on season ticket holders or ticket holders. You know, if there's an unjust case, we are more than happy to put people in touch with people who can help them. So it's a wide-ranging brief. We also have one of the other angles that I work in is community and charity work. So we've adopted some local charities. We've raised funds for Prostate Cancer UK. We also raised funds for a local Studio 306 collective, which is a way of getting people with mental health issues who are craft-minded into making things for sale and giving them a purpose in life, which helps them get back into the wider community. And we also help raising funds for Tottenham Food Bank in conjunction with the football club. So you can drop off at the van, which is on the corner of Church Road and White Hart Lane in the Tottenham Community Centre on match days, normally between 1 and 3 hours before kickoff. We tweet out what they need. Obviously non-perishables. I think last time they were after sauces like mayonnaise, tomato ketchup, all those sorts of things. And also raising funds through a text giving service where you can give money, or you can give money directly to the Tottenham Food Bank through donations. So, you know, I know during the pandemic we'd raised over, or helped raise through our fans, over £50,000 for the food bank. And we're continuing to raise funds, as I say, in conjunction with the club through a text giving service. So many wide-ranging facets. You know, it isn't just about holding Daniel's feet over the fire and asking him pertinent questions, but there are many other angles and aspects to, you know, the work that we do.
It is an incredible amount of work that you do, Pete, and you know, on behalf of all of the fans, you know, I speak for a lot of Tottenham Hotspur fans who I talk to on a regular basis, and you know, they all say what a wonderful job the trust do. So thank you so much for all your hard work, and wishing you the best of luck in next week's meeting as well, and hopefully you get the answers that you want.
Thank you very much.
Very nice to have you on, Pete, and you know, can't thank you enough, and hopefully you can come on again in the near future and tell us about that meeting.
More than happy to.
Thank you very much, Gary, Pete and Ram. Can't thank you enough for tonight. Thanks, everyone, for all of your comments. Let's hope that Tottenham Hotspur get the 3 points on Sunday and we climb up that Premier League table, get that winning mentality going again, that winning momentum, and, you know, as I say, climb up that Premier League table. Thanks for watching, everyone. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Spurs.